Our next guest is Dr. Bruce Tamerlan from Providence Mission Hospital. Dr. Bruce, thank you for joining us today.
Yep, you're welcome.
So we're going to talk a little bit about insomnia and what kind of makes you an expert. What's your background in insomnia and sleep disorders in general?
Oh, I became interested when I was in training in pulmonary like 40 years ago. And I came out to UC Irvine because they had one of the first sleep centers in America. At that time, it wasn't a specialty. And now, of course, everyone knows about sleep medicine and the problems with sleep. It's becoming more and more important every year.
Okay. So specifically, as we talk about insomnia, how does someone maybe, what are some of the telltale signs we might know? What is insomnia and how is it different than I just have trouble falling asleep?
Well, probably more than half of us have had insomnia at some time in our life, but it usually resolves on itself. Different kinds of insomnia include initiating sleep, trouble falling asleep, or maintaining sleep, staying asleep, and then both. Many patients have both. If it lasts for more than 3 months, then it's regarded as chronic insomnia, which affects about 10% of us.
Okay. And so if let's say I'm worried about something, I'm worrying myself and I'm up late at nights, that's not really something in terms of insomnia. So what are some of the things that we look for in terms of symptoms?
So some of the patients are sleepy all day long because they can't get the at least minimum of 6 hours of sleep. Some people are cranky and irritable. They're not themselves. Some people don't recognize that they have insomnia. And when we do sleep studies on patients, we can see that they are having arousals and periods of wakefulness all night long that they don't even perceive. So daytime fatigue is related to that, less energy. It's one of the causes of fatigue that maybe doctors forget to ask about. Car wrecks, even people with insomnia can be as sleepy as someone with narcolepsy, and they can have sleep attacks during the day, so that it can be quite serious. And of course, the more you worry about it, the worse you get.
Mm-hmm. Now, with so much technology and people looking at their phones at night and maybe having overstimulated, are those some of the things that you would be watching for if a patient comes to you and says, "Hey, I think I'm having some sleeping issues"?
Those the Apple Watches and the other devices are so helpful nowadays, and it, at the very least, it identifies someone who's interested in their sleep and their sleep quality, which again is becoming more and more important. They aren't completely accurate, but on the other hand, they're better than nothing. They can't really determine sleep stages, but they can determine how long a person is asleep and how disturbed their sleep is. So they're very helpful to us.
It can also sometimes be that people just aren't practicing good sleep habits in that case. And like when you're ruling these things out, when you look at these things, are people just like they're staying up too late, they're drinking caffeine at night, things like that? Are that some of the challenges that you have in identifying insomnia versus other factors?
And people often ask, do I need a sleep test to determine my insomnia? But really, visiting with either me or a nurse practitioner who's very experienced in sleep medicine is often good enough. And you can determine whether the patient is practicing what we call good sleep hygiene, which includes going to bed at the same time every night, waking up same time every morning, even on weekends,
Mm-hmm.
and using a sleep environment that's receptive to sleep. That is, no lights, no electronic devices. It's been shown, there was one study where they were actually able to awaken blind people by shining lights on their skin. So that we're very sensitive to light, and we don't realize that. So there are other practices that that are very helpful, and they fall into the category of sleep hygiene.
Okay. Now, if I'm having these kind of challenges and I'm doing this, what is the test? I guess since you say there's no real test, what is it that I'm going to help you determine this person has insomnia? What are some of the key identifiers in there?
Well, a discussion with the patient, a sleep diary is very helpful. We usually have the patient keep about a 2-week diary of when they wake up, when they go to sleep, when they have problems at night. That's part of a medical history. There's a scale called the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, which is a 24 point survey that determines whether somebody is dangerously sleepy. Normal is less than 10. A narcoleptic might be 20, 24, but people with insomnia have significant sleep during the day as well. We review the medicines. There are some medications that even the regular PCPs and internists don't know about that can cause sleep disturbances. For example, the beta blockers like propranolol, metoprolol, toprol, they can cause not only disrupted sleep, but bad dreams. So often we have a patient with the permission of their doc to switch it to the morning rather than the evening. A lot of the mood medicines, basically, there are two categories: mood medicines that make you chill, relax you, and mood medicines that give you energy. Sometimes we find a patient is on a mood medicine that gives them energy that they're taking at night. And so we ask their doctor if it's acceptable to move it to the daytime. There are medical issues too. Some of the medical issues include gastroesophageal reflux, so where they have heartburn that wakes them up, hidden asthma, asthmatics that don't think, they say they quote outgrew their asthma, but at nighttime they wheeze. And in those cases, that's a good time to do a in-facility sleep study, which
Okay.
is really remarkably insightful. Also, like
there could be some hidden other hidden or other unknown medical issues that are now causing the insomnia on top of whatever that, like you said, the sleep apnea or the asthma and things like that.
correct. So we weed them out during the interview with the patient and determine whether they need a sleep study. If we're concerned about the periodic limb movements, which go along with restless leg syndrome, we can do a sleep study. When you do a sleep study in the facility, patients usually only change positions maybe 3 to 5 times. Some of the patients flip around 12 times, 10, 12, 15 times. And in those patients, we're concerned about those disorders that I mentioned, and also the musculoskeletal stuff, the back pain patients, the fibromyalgia patients, and so forth. And if we can help them find the right doc or help them get better, treat their symptoms, then they sleep much better. So insomnia may be associated with medical issues.
Okay. Now we talked about some of the short-term things you might notice. What are there long-term impacts, like in terms of sleep deprivation, that can impact your brain and your overall health?
Oh, definitely, definitely, and it can affect you over time, and it's a significant health risk, including cardiac disease, including stroke. There's many things that are associated with insomnia if left untreated. If you can treat the insomnia, identify it, and treat it early, then you have more of a likelihood of correcting it. If it's been established for 2 years or more, it's very difficult to treat, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try, because again, there may have been overlooked issues that someone else hadn't thought of.
Mhm. Now, can a lot of our viewers obviously are retired, and can there be age-related insomnia? Is that something that can happen to you as you get older, have more trouble sleeping in general, and things like that? Is that something you see in a higher age group?
As you get older, you're more likely to have insomnia, but also you're more likely to have medical issues. You're more likely to have time on your hands, and you watch the news every night and you worry about that sort of thing. In general, as you get older, worries don't increase, but they decrease, because you've learned in life that it doesn't really make any difference how much you worry. But having said that, there are a lot of factors in people's lives. So the two biggest groups are the quote elderly and also women. Women seem to have it more than men. Part of it's related to menopause, but part of it is just genetic. They can have insomnia that runs in families. I always ask if there's a family member, and it's typically the mother who had insomnia, and you see it through generations. So they've identified a gene for insomnia,
Mhm.
and so far they can't fix it. But someday, probably not too far away, they'll be able to fix that gene as well.
Okay. You talked about some of the other things, don't use electronics, get into a regular sleep pattern. What about things I can prevent in terms of alcohol use, smoking? Are there some other things we're doing to ourselves that are setting ourselves up for these challenges?
Yeah, and the misconception is that alcohol helps you sleep, and it does help you fall asleep. But typically, the patients wake up around 2, 3, 4 a.m., and it's a mini alcohol withdrawal. So if you must drink alcohol, it should be earlier in the maybe in the late afternoon, but not right at bedtime. Also, smoking, that causes sleep disruption. There's thankfully not as much smoking here in California as there is around the rest of the country, but smoking can affect your sleep quality as well. Pets in the bed, we always ask about pets in the bed. We always ask about the bed partner. Does the bed partner snore? Maybe we need to see the bed partner. Many of the bed partners have moved and are in different rooms because of such things. So the room should be cool. It should be dark. If you feel like you need to, you can't sleep, you should get up and leave the room and maybe sit in the kitchen or dining room for a while. And when you're sleepy, go back to sleep.
Mm-hmm. So best if you're facing some of these challenges, best thing to do is get a consultation from a nurse or doctor.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Before you spend money on a test, the tests are useful, particularly if one suspects sleep apnea as a cause or limb movements as a cause, because they can wake you up, or other medical issue. I mean, the gold standard is an in-facility sleep study, and we learned so much from it, but the insurance companies actively discourage it. Interestingly, Medicare patients we can usually get in without any problem, and we learned so much.
Okay, well, great. Well, it sounds like we've got a lot of things that people can do right now just from this conversation that might be able to help. And then if we see continuing problems, that's a time to get a consultation, right?
Right.
Right. Well, Dr. Tamlin, Providence Mission Hospital, thank you so much for joining us today. Some great information.
Glad. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank
I hope
you.
everyone does learn something from this.
We will. Thanks a lot. You're watching This Day. We'll be right back.